Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's John Campea, and this is a special video talking all about all the things that go on in the Transformers movie. And something is loose. Give me a second. And it's not loose anymore. All the things that will go on in Bumblebee, and we've got that all set, and we're going to talk openly about the new film Bumblebee and everything that went on it. Now, I'm going to warn you guys right now. You've got to understand that this is a spoiler review. This is a spoiler review, which means if you have not seen Bumblebee yet and you don't want to be spoiled, you need to stop watching this video right now, because we are going to talk openly about the things we loved about this movie, maybe some of the things that didn't work for us in the movie as well, but we're going to talk about no holds barred. All right, so with that out of the way, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about the movie for a couple of minutes, about the things that I really liked, and one of the things that did not work for me in Bumblebee. And then we're just going to spend a few minutes in taking your guys' thoughts, comments, and questions about Bumblebee movie. Ask about and talk about and bring up anything you want, because this is a spoiler-friendly zone. So let me start with this. I went to watch Bumblebee again last night. And I went to see a late show in Riverside, California last night. And I'll tell you what, I saw it first a couple of weeks ago when they did that advanced fan screening. I cannot tell you, because you guys know, for those of you who've watched me for any period of time, you know that I love Transformers. They were the toys that I collected growing up. I collected more Transformers toys than I ever did of Star Wars toys. I don't know why. Like, I prefer Star Wars, but I don't know. There's just something about the Transformers toys I loved. I collected more of those than anything else, even more than Star Wars toys. And I really liked the first Michael Bay Transformers. I really liked that film a lot. All the other Transformers films to me have been steaming piles of shit. And they've gotten progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And then finally, the audience finally started to abandon those films. And anyway, hated them. I've hated all of them. So it was with a degree of trepidation that I went to go see the new Transformers. Now, I had a little bit of hope because, they brought in Travis Knight, the guy who directed Kubo and the Two Strings. The director is always the most important thing when it comes to a film. Always the most important element of any film. And that doesn't mean it always is 100% dependent on the director, but that is the biggest influence about whether a movie's good or not. And I had a lot of faith in Travis Knight, but still, a little bit of trepidation. I cannot tell you how much joy it gave me to walk out of Bumblebee with a smile on my face for the first time in years. To walk out of a Transformers movie with a smile on my face. That meant so much to me. I had such a good time. I enjoyed Bumblebee far more than I was anticipating that I would. It is such a fundamentally better film than any Transformers movie we've had. I'm still not sure if I prefer the first Transformers or Bumblebee, but it's damn close. But it's easily so fundamentally the best Transformers movie we had in a long time. And a number of things they did great. And I'll tell you what they did great. You see, anybody can just step in and go, oh, let's put in a scene with the G1 designs of the Transformers. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. So putting that in there was very crowd-pleasing, right? Like, I'm going to tell you what, when Soundwave comes on and he says, ravage, eject, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't care. I squealed like a 12-year-old girl who just saw Justin Timberlake for the first time. I'm telling you what, I squealed like a child. And we're sitting in this theater, and, we see someone, they go, oh, that's awesome. And I know from the trailer that he ejects Ravage, but you don't hear him say Ravage, eject in the trailer. So when he did that, man, I was like, ah! I screamed in the theater. Straight up, I screamed. No hyperbole, I'm not exaggerating. I screamed in the theater when he said Ravage, eject. I just lost my mind. And all that stuff was great. And seeing not only Soundwave, seeing Shockwave is awesome. He was one of my favorite toys. Shockwave was one of my absolute favorite toys. Seeing Cliff Jumpers, and for those of you who don't remember, Cliff Jumper was a lot like Starscream and Thundercracker and stuff like that. Remember Starscream, Thundercracker, was it Ramjet was one of the names of the other one? Something Warp. I'm trying to remember the name of all the jet plane. It was Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp. But remember those toys were all the exact same toy, just with different colors on them? That was such a great hustle by Hasbro at the time. Those 3 characters were the exact same toy. They just put different stickers on them saying, no, this isn't Starscream, kids. This is Thundercracker. Okay, anyway. Cliffjumper, for those of you who didn't, remember the Autobot that they caught on the moon of Saturn? And they cut him in half? He kept saying, my name is Cliffjumper, lieutenant in the Autobot resistance. And they cut him in half. Cliffjumper was the exact same toy as Bumblebee. The Cliffjumper toy and the Bumblebee toy were the exact same toy. It's just that Cliffjumper was red, Bumblebee was yellow. That was the only difference between them. But it was really cool seeing Cliffjumper on there. But here's the thing, guys. Seriously, anybody can just walk in and say, have a quick 5-minute scene with a bunch of Transformers fighting each other in their original G1 designs. Anybody could have walked in and done that. That's not what made the movie special. It was great to see. It was fun. But anybody could have done that. What made the movie special, and what makes it fundamentally better than all the other Transformers movies since the first one, is that they actually made a Transformer a character. Bumblebee had a soul. He emoted emotion. There was subtlety and there was over-the-topness all at the same time. He was a legitimate, real character. And you can't say that about any of the other Transformers movies. In every other Transformers movie, the characters are just caricatures. In Bumblebee, Bumblebee's a character. And they handled him as such. And they gave weight, and you believe the story, and you're into the story. And whereas if you mismanage, see, some people think having humans in Transformers is the mistake. No. It's how you misuse humans in a Transformers movie that makes it a waste. But you put a human character in the hands of a director like Travis Knight, the Haley Steinfeld character. I think that her name was Charlie Watts. I think that's the name of the character was. But you may give her a story and you have it acted in such a way and handle it in such a way, I became completely as bought in to her story and her struggle with the passing of her father, dealing with the fact that her family is starting to find a way to move on, but she hasn't, and that's creating bitterness. I was as bought into that part of the story as I was about Bumblebee trying to get his memory back. I was just as bought into the human part of it. And that's what makes this movie so much better than the other ones. Characters. Both the CG characters and the actual human characters. And I bought into it and I believed it and I liked the story and it worked. And to me, there's a lot of great things about this movie. But to me, that's the thing. You know, if you had to say what's the turning point of this movie that really differentiates, that's it. Characters. And the use and how they handled the character, both the human and the CGI. And that's what made it work. Now, I'll also say this, though. And then, don't worry, I'm going to talk for another minute, guys. Then I'm going to go over to the questions that you guys have been firing in. The weakest part of this movie, and I have mentioned this before, but unfortunately was John Cena. Now, I believe John Cena, he has a place in Hollywood. I believe he's got a future in Hollywood. But I think what we have seen in both Blockers and in this Bumblebee movie is that John Cena is not yet ready to carry a film. He can't be one of your lead guys. You have him in small supporting comedic roles, he'll nail it and he'll crush it and he'll make it really entertaining. And I believe he'll get to a point where he can carry films like that on his shoulders. But right now he ain't there. You know? I mean, the one line, right from the opening scene when he's talking to his fellow soldier that he's caught in his upside down, all that dialogue sounded fake. I mean, it just felt cheesy. The dialogue was fine, but the way he was saying it just felt like this is a low quality movie. The one scene he really crushed, and yes, it was a good line, but he sold it to me. It's like, and I'm not getting the exact wording right, but when he goes, is it just their name is the Decepticons? Does not set up any red flags for anybody. It was a great line because it's kind of poking fun at the obvious, right? And he delivered that line. And there were a few lines in the movie that he delivered. It's not like he sucked for the whole thing. He didn't. There were a few lines he delivered and delivered well. But just overall, you can tell he's not quite there yet, that he shouldn't be inhabiting a big role in a film. He can't carry that yet. Despite how big his shoulders are, he can't carry that yet. So that was one of the downsides for me. But still, overall, I thought the action was great. I think Travis Knight avoided the temptation to just do nothing but action, 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 action. That just becomes visual noise if you don't do it right, and if you don't do it in the proper proportions. I believe Travis Knight found a way to do it in the proper proportions. I love the way how he started the movie on Cybertron. They started the movie on Cybertron, and then a little bit later on, hold on a second. A little bit later on, they don't do another scene on Cybertron, but what they do is they do a flashback. They do a flashback to what Bumblebee saw on Cybertron, and that kind of became an excuse for them and a way for them to kind of go back and hold on a second. That became a way for them to cut back to it and show more without actually going and doing another scene on Cybertron. So that was a brilliant little device that Travis Knight used. I thought it was huge. It was great. But yeah, I've walked out of this thing thoroughly enjoying it. If you had asked me a month and a half ago, I would have said the two best movies coming out of this 7-day window was going to be Mary Poppins and Aquaman. And it turns out neither of those are true. The two best movies of this 7-day window are Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Bumblebee. And I liked Aquaman very much. We're going to do a spoiler discussion on Aquaman tomorrow. And I had a really good time with Aquaman, but I just thought Bumblebee was just that much better. I just thought Bumblebee was that much better. And I had such a great time with it, a lot of fun, and I hope a lot of you guys did too. So listen, that's me yammering on enough about it. Let's get to the real stuff here, which is you guys writing in and bringing up the things you want to talk about with Bumblebee. So let's go do that right now. And we're going to start things off with Cody Carroll, who writes, always found it interesting that the Decepticons could transform to cooler and more dangerous vehicles, whereas the Autobots just use cars mainly. I mean, and until the aerial bots came along, this is going back into old lore, old Transformers toy lore. But and before the aerial bots came out, it was just really the Decepticons were aerial vehicles, although not all of them were. Soundwave wasn't clearly. Rumble, Ravage, Laserbeak, all those guys. And there were some other exceptions as well. But for the most part, you had your Decepticons were aerial things and Autobots were cars. And I've never understood the rationale behind that, especially since in the movies, Autobots and Decepticons can just look at a vehicle, scan it, and then turn into that. So I'm thinking, why would a Transformer ever choose to be a motorcycle? Why not choose to be a fighter jet? But I guess maybe you got to be a certain size of a Decepticon to take on, I don't know, the likeness of something else. But I think the reason they did that initially in the toy universe was just as a good, easy way to differentiate the good guys from the bad guys. The good guys are the cars. The bad guys are the jets. You know, I said Megatron and whatever's as well. And then they expanded more. You got Dinobots, Aerobots, Insecticons, a lot of different things. But anyway, Cody follows up with, enjoyed the change of pace from the old ones by having a female lead and a female villain Decepticon. Shia and Mark were great, but the girl kicked ass. Well, and again, I don't think it had anything. I don't think what you're saying is true, but I don't necessarily think it's true because they did a female character. I just think it's true because they gave a character depth and real emotion and real character, right? They didn't make the character a caricature. And as good of an actor as Shia LaBeouf is, for the most part, they made Sam a caricature. And they certainly made the Autobots and Decepticons caricatures. I mean, that's for sure. So I don't think it was because it was a female character that it was able to do all that. No, they made a character and invested that in it, and it just so happens that they chose a female character this time around to do it. And yeah, I thought it was great. I think we had our first female Decepticon, other than, the one that... By the way, I've always hated that thing Michael Bay did where a Transformer could transform into an exact human likeness. That was stupid. I hated that whole thing. Anyway, so yes, I agree, but I don't think it's because it was a female character. It just so happens it was a female character. All right. Mark Williams writes, I liked it overall. Maybe I'm just too cynical, but the tone overall felt very Disney Channel Presents. I felt like I was watching a PG kids film. I don't know. Hey, look, I don't know what to tell you, Mark. I mean, here's the thing. All film's subjective. Just because I love the film doesn't mean you need to love the film. Not at all. And it doesn't mean I'm right and you're wrong. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But I will say this. What's wrong with something being PG? I mean, clearly it was PG-13, but even if it was PG, what's wrong with it being PG? If the action is there, if the excitement is there, if you had good story, good character development, I don't know, does Bumblebee need to drop an F-bomb for it to be cool? I hope that's not what you're saying. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I just hope that's not what you're saying. But also remember that this is a movie based on a kid's toy line. So it's always going to have its roots on that. It's always going to have its roots in that. And make no mistake about it. Hasbro lets these movies get made so they can sell toys. The question is, do they make a good movie as they do it? And I think with Bumblebee, they did. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you're just not expressing it right, Mark, because it's totally cool if it didn't quite work for you that much, because film is subjective. That's totally fine. But I hope it's not because, it felt like it was PG. Well, why not? The Lion King's a PG movie. It's one of its greatest animated film of all time. So I didn't have any issue with that on that level. I thought they had great characters, great story beats, good emotion, great action when it called for it. Yeah, I just thought it was a winner on that level. But hey, every movie hits us in different ways, and that's totally fine. Angel Chang writes, this is the first live spoiler discussion I'm seeing before the movie. I know a new director, but Michael Bay killed me. Anyways, Merry Christmas, John. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, you are going to find, look, I am not a Michael Bay hater. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I am not a Michael Bay hater by any stretch of the imagination. There are a number of Michael Bay movies I really quite enjoy. I really like Armageddon. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, but I really like it. I don't care who else hates it. I love The Rock. The Rock is probably my favorite Michael Bay movie. I love that one. I think Pain and Gain is really quite solid. I really like the first Transformers movies. But listen, good character and emotion and stuff like that is not Michael Bay's strength. And Michael Bay will probably be the first one to tell you that. To bring in a director like Travis Knight, who just knows how to tell story so much better than a Michael Bay does, and introduce that element to a Transformers movie, and we've never had that element to a Transformers movie, to me, it elevated it. To me, and again, you may not have had the same experience, and that's totally fine. But for me, it elevated it quite a bit. And I enjoyed it a lot on that level. So, yeah, I think you're going to really notice, like right in the DNA of this movie, you will notice, oh yeah, even if nobody told you in advance, 2 minutes into watching this movie, you'll go, this feels like it has a different director than the other ones did. And it totally does. You can tell that right away. All right. Alexander Helmer writes, relationship between Bee and Charlie was great. I'll tell you what, there's a million moving pieces to a movie and dozens of things that can work or not work. But it seems like in a lot of movies, while if a movie doesn't work, you can attribute it to a lot of things. If it does work, you can attribute it to a lot of things. But sometimes in movies you can go, okay, yeah, but if this one thing doesn't work, this movie doesn't work. And that one thing in Bumblebee is the relationship between Charlie and Bumblebee. If you don't buy into that bond that they form, if you don't buy into that stuff that they set up, if you don't buy into that relationship, then none of the rest of the movie works. Because it's all predicated on that bond and that relationship. And if that doesn't work, the rest of the movie doesn't work. Because a lot of the other things are built on the foundation of buying into that bond. And so if it doesn't work, then it creates this emotional domino effect, I would propose. It would create a domino effect that just a number of the other things that come after that just wouldn't work or not be nearly as effective. And then all you'd be left again is with the action. And well, Michael Bay can do action. And I've always said this about the Michael Bay films. On-screen action without narrative purpose is just visual noise. I should make a t-shirt that says that. Action without narrative purpose is just visual noise. And that describes a lot of Transformers movies. Michael Bay throws in all this action, and then you stop for a second and go, wait, why is this all happening? I don't know. Look, Decepticons. Huh, kids? I mean, and that's kind of been the thing. And so it could be a great action scene, loses all interest. Travis Knight, even right from the beginning of Bumblebee, when they're showing them on Cybertron, that doesn't just show, I mean, another director could have just jumped in. It's just so Autobots and Decepticons fighting. No, they first establish why are they fighting. And they do that through Optimus Prime, telling this is what's happening. We need to do this. This is following. We need to blah, blah, blah. And he sets up the narrative purpose of the action that you then see unfold on the screen. So now not only you're seeing these Gen 1 Transformers doing all these things and kicking all sorts of ass, you know why they're doing it in service of the story, and that makes the action great to watch instead of just visual noise. And that's something that he does there as well. Anyway, let's go on. Ethan Canister writes, I thought that the scene on Cybertron were great. Yeah, they were great. But again, if you don't build a great movie around it, then it just becomes visual noise. But because right from the beginning, I just said this, but you set up narrative purpose for that scene on Cybertron, then you give us some really cool action, now we're bought in. Now we're bought in. The action has purpose. And so we can become emotionally invested in it. Instead of just going back and going, ooh, that looks kick-ass, but now we're emotionally invested because we know why it's happening. There's purpose. And that's a big important thing. But yes, man, those scenes, because they had purpose, were great. And like I said, I squealed at that sound wave part. I just squealed at it. All right. Curtis Lopez writes, the scene where Bumblebee smashes the car. Dude, my biggest laugh of the movie. And again, this is all Travis Knight. The scene where Bumblebee starts to smash the car. Now, in a script, you could have just gone, okay, so Bumblebee then goes over and misunderstands and kind of smashes the car. Okay, that's fun. But when you watch the scene, you see the personality of Bumblebee in it, right? Like, he's getting excited about, look, I'm smashing the eggs on, and he loves the positive feedback he's getting from Charlie and Mema, was that his name? Anyway, he's getting their positive feedback, so he starts getting more carried away. So he starts hitting it with his fist, and then he starts jumping on it, then he starts dancing on it. That could have been a funny scene, but because Travis Knight infused it with the character and the personality of the character, it took that scene from being a cute little scene, Bumblebee destroying car, to an outright hilarious scene. Because we've bought into the character and the other characters and their bond and all this kind of stuff. And they infused a funny sight gag with the personality of the characters, and it's gold. So I'm with you, Curtis. That to me might have been my favorite part of the movie. Other than Soundwave saying Ravage eject, that might have been my favorite part of the movie. That Bumblebee smashing on the car. That part was just hilarious. Let's see. Where are we at? Oh yeah, next one from Curtis. Ravage eject, awesome. John, did you squeal? You probably wrote that in before we started the broadcast. Yep. Like a child. Like a child tasting ice cream for the first time, I squealed. Ah! It was so funny because Ann and I saw it with a couple friends of ours. And you guys might remember my friend Dorina, but she was there with us and her friend Brennan, her husband Brennan. And Dorina was sitting 2 seats over from me. So she came up to me and she goes, was that you that squealed when Soundwave ejected Ravage? I'm like, you're damn right, that was me. Deal with it. I was so excited about that. That was amazing. Curtis writes, this was such a refresher after years of trash. Oh, God, you have no idea. You have no idea. And it felt good not only because I love Transformers, but half of my household income comes from Hasbro. I've never hidden that. Half of my household income comes from Hasbro because Ann's a big exec over there at Hasbro. But I've always done nothing but shit on Hasbro for their horrible movies. And it's like, I mean, they're the ones who pay us half of our money to our house, but Hasbro, and I'm just constantly talking crap about Hasbro and everything they've done with their movies. It felt so nice to actually finally go into a Hasbro movie and enjoy it. I still don't forgive Hasbro for what they did with the 1980s animated Transformers film. Screw whoever came up with those ideas. I still will never forgive them for that. But it's finally nice to come out of a Transformers movie liking it and to finally being able to honestly say something nice about a Hasbro movie. Because I always feel kind of bad that I got to come out here and crap all over them all the time since, Anne is employed by Hasbro. But, they put out crappy stuff. I'm going to say it's crappy stuff. But it's nice to be able to say, you know what? I finally like something that they did. Anyway, let's see. We're at Curtis writes again. I love how both Charlie and the mom were right and wrong on this. Oh, I love that stuff too. We're right on wrong on both of their sides. Charlie needed to be noticed, yet distancing herself in that way was unhealthy. Absolutely. And you know what? I love seeing Pamela Alden, is the actress's name, playing her mom. And the only reason I really know her is because I used to love this David Duchovny show called Californication. And she was a series regular in Californication. And she was great in that show. I used to love her in that show. So seeing her in a Transformers movie. But again, it's Travis Knight giving us real, human, emotional drama within all the spectacle that elevates this movie way above all the other ones. And you're right. This whole dynamic about... Clearly, the family had a loss. It looks like it was about 3 years earlier they had a loss. The mom has finally found a way to move on, and apparently she's found a really nice guy. And by the way, how great was it that the new guy was actually a nice guy? The stereotypical thing in these movies is when the mom gets the new boyfriend, he's a dick, and they actually made him out to be a nice guy. By the way, how much did that dude look like Steve Carell's younger brother? I mean, doesn't he just look like he'd be Steve Carell's younger brother? Anyway. But I love the fact that they didn't avoid the issue. The family has been moving on and learning to move on. Charlie has been unable to do that. And that will eventually lead to bitterness and spite between both sides. The mom is like, we're trying to move on here and you're making it harder for us to move on. And the daughter's like, how dare you move on? It's like you're just crapping all over dad's memory. And they finally had that one scene. They didn't spend a lot of time on it. They didn't need to. They had that one scene where they finally confront each other about it. And I just found that as a film fan, as a fan of storytelling, so nice. It was a nice scene, man. It was a really, really nice scene. And I thought it was just handled well. And again, that's not the type of scene you could have done with Michael Bay. Michael Bay could have tried to do a scene like that, but he just would have thrown in a visual gag and a couple of yuck jokes and then moved on. Travis Knight said, no, this is an emotional issue between these characters. Let's confront it. And let's have them confront each other and do it in an emotionally honest way. And I love that they did it. And I thought it was great for especially for a movie like this. It's kind of crazy that they did it in a movie like this. All right. Dark Sith writes, I love the movie so much, and I geeked out when the G1 Transformers came on the screen. And when you got the touch briefly played in the movie, it was a lot of fun. Here's my story about the you got the touch part, Dark. So me and a lot of guys who were in that advanced fan screening, when Bumblebee starts to play, you got the touch, you could tell who in that theater had seen the original Transformers animated movie. Because those of us like, yeah, like we're all in the audience, like, right? So I'll know. But Anne had no idea. Like, I remember we were walking out. She goes, by the way, there's that one scene when they were doing the cliff diving that this song came on. A bunch of people in the theater cheered. What was that about? I'm like, oh, have you never seen you'd never seen the animated movie? She goes, no. All right, let's get home. So we came home, and I immediately popped on YouTube, and I found the scene from the animated movie, and I played it. She goes, oh, they use the same song. I said, yes, that's why everybody got so excited about that. It was a great little nod. And actually, if you listen and watch Dark, if you watch Travis Knight being interviewed about this whole movie was his love letter to the toys he played with growing up, like me, like maybe some of you. This whole movie was his love letter to that. He's a child of the 80s. That's when he had his formative years were in the 80s. And playing with Transformers and his love of the G1 stuff and, his memories of the anime thing. So him throwing in a thing like that, him throwing in a cliff jumper and him doing little things like that, just gave it such special little touches that us as fans could appreciate. And you're absolutely right. And the timing of playing it was perfect too. It was absolutely perfect. And you know what? it was so done so perfectly and put in such the right place that even somebody like Anne, who hadn't seen the original animated, that was the right song to play because he's trying to encourage her to go and do the dive. You got the touch, right? So it was brilliant on two levels. For those of us who did recognize the song, it was great nostalgia for us. But if there's people there who didn't know what that was, it still worked for them within the scene. It was a great touch. It was a great way for them to approach it. And the G1 stuff was pretty cool to see. It was pretty fun. Of course, making them G1 and building it around a terrible movie would have been useless. But because the movie is so good, it really makes us appreciate the G1 designs that they decided to go with. All right. Let's move on here. Where are we at? We are at Nick. And Nick writes, loved the movie. I thought Charlie/Bumblebee was like Hiccup and Toothless. Yeah. And loved the transforming into cars while in mid-battle. The way they used... didn't the transformations, when he would actually transform, didn't it just look natural and smooth and fluid? Now, don't get me wrong. I would have been fine if every time Bumblebee transformed, it was chink, 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 chink. If they did that and had the sound. That's the best impersonation of the Transformers sound I can make. Don't ask me to do it again. Anyway, I would have been fine. But the way they visually did it so smooth, and it looked very natural, and it looked like it was all working, like all the pieces were fitting together. It was great. And the way Bumblebee can sometimes very quickly go into car mode, very quickly come out, sometimes very methodically and slowly go into car mode or slowly come out into robot form. They did it different times and at different speeds, at different ways throughout the film, just to keep it a little bit refreshing, I guess you could say. But yeah, I thought that worked, and I thought that worked really well. And just another reason why that works for me. And again, the Charlie Bumblebee thing. You're right. I had not thought of that comparison of the Hiccup and Toothless stuff from How to Train Your Dragon. For those of you who don't know what Nick was talking about, that's Hiccup and Toothless are the characters from How to Train Your Dragon. It does remind me a lot of that, as a matter of fact. And again, if that bond doesn't work, the movie falls apart, and the movie doesn't work. So it was really key and vital that they make it work, and they did. And I just ate it up. All right. Eric DeRigi writes, it's a pet peeve of mine when characters aren't named. They never once mentioned any of the Decepticons by name in the movie. How do you feel about characters never get named in movies? Also, like Piper's character in They Live. It all depends. It all depends. Because I'll tell you what. Anne came out of the movie, not hearing their names never once bothered her. And I know the name. They're the Triple Changers. They're the first Triple Changers they've used in these movies. And I can't remember the names off the top of my head. The names of the characters. I just can't. Actually, let me pull it up here. I can tell you what it was. It was... Okay, so... Oh, it was Shatter. It was Shatter. That was the lead one. And that was voiced by Angela Bassett. And I believe the other one was Dropkick, voiced by Justin Theroux. So, do you notice they had RC in there at the beginning too? They had RC at the beginning. But anyway, it was Angela Bassett was doing the voice of Shatter. And Justin Theroux gave the voice to Dropkick. If there was a point where a name-by-name introduction was required and they didn't do it, but I don't know. I don't know that you have to go out of your way, to have, Shatter's trying to hook up her broadcast thing to broadcast out the Decepticons. Dear Decepticon Army, it is I! And then she turns to the camera. Shatter! And then go back to it. I mean, I'm okay with it. It honestly, most people I know walked out not knowing what the name of those two Decepticons were, and it didn't seem to affect them either way. Didn't seem to affect them negatively in the least. So, I don't know. I mean, I can see what you're saying, Eric, but here's where it is. There were only two Decepticons, right? For the most part in the movie. It was Shatter and Dropkick. Those, for the most part, those were the two Decepticons. So you just knew it's just those two. Do do we need to know their names? Like if there were 8 Decepticons on Earth doing a whole bunch of different things, then we need to know what their names are so we can follow what's happening in the story. There were just the 2 of them, so it didn't really mean all that much. So I'm just trying to think of another example, Eric, of a movie that didn't name a character, where them not giving a name to the character somehow and on some level pulled me out of the movie. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but maybe it's just because it's something I've never paid attention to. Clearly, it's something you've paid attention to, so if you've paid attention to it in the past, then maybe when it happens in another movie, it quite stands out to you, like maybe a pebble in your shoe, and it's kind of annoying. And I get that, but I can't really think of any time that it's ever caused an issue for me. What do you guys think about that? Have you ever had a movie, and maybe Bumblebee is one of those movies for you, where when they don't explicitly lay out the name of a certain character, does that, number one, really not mean anything to you as long as it flows with the story? Or maybe like Eric, maybe that's just like a little pebble in your shoe and it just kind of irritates you. What's been your experience on that? I'd be curious to hear what you think, because that's a very interesting point you bring up, Eric. But again, it's not even something I thought about. Even after seeing the movie twice, I never gave it a thought. But again, it's a valid point you bring up. Guys, let me know. Is that something that bothers you as well? All right, let's keep going here. We got Edgar Navarro who writes, sadly, I was let down by the film, but I think I went in too hyped up for it. I really only liked the short Cybertron and fight scenes. And you know what, Edgar, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're going in just looking for big explosions or whatever, then yeah, just those scenes. I want more than that out of my movies. Give me the action, give me the booms, give me the explosions, give me all that kind of good stuff, but put it in a movie with good stories and good characters and make it live. You know, make it live. Don't just give me a video game cutscene. Give me a movie. But you know, at the same time, man, I mean, like I said, all film's subjective. If it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you. There are several movies out there. Look, everybody right now is talking about how Roma is like one of the best films they've ever seen in their lives. And I watched Roma and I was bored by it. And you know me, I'm not just looking for big explosions and action. I like good drama, but I didn't find anything compelling about Roma, but everybody else on the planet did. So I'll be the odd guy out on that one. All film's subjective, man. If it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you, and that's too bad. But again, as just little flashes of something, that the opening was great. And that's too bad. I'm sad that you didn't appreciate the rest of the movie on the same level that I did. But hey, that's movies, and that's what being a film fan's all about, man. Eric DeRigi writes, did you catch the Agent Simmons Sector 7 cameo? I did not. I know they were in Sector 7. Agent Simmons? I did not. No, I wasn't even looking for it, so I did not. But the next time I go, Eric, I will have to look for that and to see if I can catch that. Let's see. Godzilla fan 111 writes, for me, I'm an 80s nerd. Music, movies, and overall entertainment I adore. Bumblebee encapsulated everything I love about the 80s and more. You know what's funny, Godzilla? I just mentioned my friend Dorina, who was there at the movie with me and Ann and her husband Brennan. And she is just like that. She's a total 80s nerd, particularly music. She loves the music of the 80s. And I think she only came because Ann and I had 2 spare tickets, so we invited her and Brennan to come along. She was not expecting to like that movie. But as soon as the movie started playing, she was sitting right beside Ann. As the movie got about 5 or 10 minutes in, and they played about 3 or 4 or 5 songs from the soundtrack, she leaned over to Ann and said, damn it, now I have to like this movie. And she really got into it because of the music, right? And that's the thing. I often talk about how in sports terminology, there are many roads to victory. There's no just one path to victory. There's many paths to victory. And one of the great things about Bumblebee, I found, for me and for most people anyway, certainly not for everybody, was that there are several hooks in this movie that can get you. Just looking for some really good action, Bumblebee can get you. Looking for some great 80s nostalgia with the music, this movie can get you. Looking for good literal character drama, this movie can get you. Looking for something with some good laughs, this movie can get you. There are several ways that Bumblebee can hook you. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's one of the highest rated films of the year. It's sitting, I think the last I checked, it was sitting at 95%. Let me just double check that right now. Last I checked, Bumblebee on Rotten Tomatoes had a 95%. It's gone all the way down to 93. So Bumblebee has sunk all the way from 95 to 93. Still one of the best reviewed movies of the year. And yeah, but like you said, there's so many different little hooks in this movie that can get you. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about it. Viper91. Where'd we go here? Viper91 writes, love the choice of turning guys into goo. Wasn't that great? Because when they were standing there with the two redneck characters, I can't remember what their names were. But that was pretty funny. You tried to sleep with my sister. Unsuccessfully. That was funny. That was such a good line. Anyway, I'm glad you brought that because, yeah, it made me think about that line. And they're sitting there and he's like, turns his arm to a gun and like, well, he's not going to kill a human character here. This is a PG-13 film. There's going to be a lot of kids. And he just disintegrates into this thing of transparent, clear goo. No blood, but he clearly killed the guy. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Because you don't have to worry about an R rating if you don't see body parts flying and blood, but you want to show that these Decepticons do not care about human life and just want to wipe them out. So they found a way to do it, and they found a visual device to do it. And it was so good. And it was pretty funny, too, but effective. Like, they're killing people, but just in this clear, transparent goo explosion. And then the line that he says after that, I like the way they pop. It was a great line, and I like the way they used that. All right. MJ writes, loved it, but that box office, see any hope? Well, look, it was projected, I think, to make 25 to 30 opening weekend, I think they said. Now, look, I've said this for months about Bumblebee. Don't expect a huge box office from Bumblebee. This is a movie that has too much baggage because we've gone through almost a decade of crap Transformers movies that have run that franchise into the ground to the point that now when you say a Transformers movie, people think it's a joke. Right? So I think Hasbro and Paramount knew Bumblebee's not going to be a big blockbuster hit. They knew that. You had to know that. There was just way too big of an uphill battle to fight. The question is, can you change people's hearts and minds about the franchise? If you can do that, then you've got a future. If you can't, you're dead in the water. And I think Paramount and Hasbro are both looking at Bumblebee, and they weren't looking for this movie to make $500 million. I think they knew that wasn't realistic. There's just too much negative baggage that this film had associated with it because of all the other crappy films. And I think they knew that. And I think they knew that they were going to measure success with Bumblebee by how well do the audiences and the critics like it. Because if we can start changing the narrative about Transformers to being, oh, a Transformers movie, that means it's going to suck, to a Transformers movie, the last one was great, then they're playing the long game. Right? They're playing the long game. For Paramount and Hasbro to do Bumblebee, they knew this wasn't just about Bumblebee. It wasn't a short game. It wasn't about this movie. It's about their franchise. And can doing Bumblebee salvage the franchise and get the franchise going in a different direction and change perceptions of the franchise? I believe this movie's done that. Like I said, it's got a 93% critic rating. Audiences, by and large, are loving it. Not everybody. No movie has everybody loving it. That's fine. But by and large, audiences are loving it. The critics are loving it. And this is paving the way for a future for this franchise. And I think this is one of those rare instances where that's what the studio was looking for. Now, they don't want to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, but I don't think they're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. But it was never going to be a hit. Bumblebee was never going to be a hit. But that's not what they need. And I think understanding what it was they did need, I think they got to count Bumblebee as a win. I think they got to count Bumblebee as a win. I really do. Let's see. Celadon Sound writes, was this a reboot or nah, or something in between? Okay, I'm a little torn because here's the thing. I've gone months saying this is not a reboot. This is not a reboot. This is not a reboot. It's kind of a restart, if you will, but not really a reboot. But then I saw the movie and I'm like, this is kind of a reboot. I think maybe this is a reboot. But then I've had discussions with some people who are like, oh, but you can see how this connects to that and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know. The ultimate answer here is I don't really know. I said forever that it's not a reboot. Then I saw it, I'm like, well, wait a minute, maybe it is a reboot. And now I'm just kind of confused. All I know is that it's a good movie. And I think this movie does break with canon, some of the things they've done and said in previous movies. But some of the things they do in this movie are also, in a way, consistent with canon from the other things. So right now, I think it's an open book for Hasbro and Paramount. I think Paramount can now take this franchise in any direction they want. They can completely follow canon if they want, or they can completely obliterate canon, which is maybe what they should do, but who knows? It's a good question. I go back and forth, to be honest with you. I go back and forth. I don't feel any sense of certainty as to the answer of that question. RA's Reviews writes, I'm a huge Smiths fan and I was happy to hear them. I love the fact that Bumblebee kicked out, you don't like the Smiths? And then he does play a Smiths song at the end. I thought the way they used that was really quite cool. And there's another number of pieces of music in this movie that were great to hear and were really nice. But I thought the way they used the Smiths stuff was actually quite creative and quite nice. All right, last couple of questions here, guys, then we're going to call it a night. Movie Games writes, this movie made me want a War for Cybertron movie. To me, yes and no. Like, the Cybertron scene was great for a scene. Do you do 90 minutes of that? I don't know. I think that just becomes visual noise, actually. So I'm not really sure. I think it's great in pieces, but I don't know that you can make that a 2-hour movie and make it a compelling, good quality movie at 2 hours. I don't know. I sometimes feel like there are things that people say they want. And I'm not saying this is you, Movie Games, not at all. I'm just saying a lot of times I think there are things like, I want to see Justice League versus Avengers. It's like, that sounds like a 10-minute YouTube video, not a major motion picture. That's just my kind of take on it. I don't know that you can make a good movie out of a 2-hour War for Cybertron. That's just, to me, is just a video game cutscene. That's just a really drawn out, long video game cutscene. I want a movie with great action and with great effects and with great battles and all that kind of stuff too. But those needs to be things that are there to serve an underlying story, not make the whole movie about big battles and War for Cybertron sort of thing. So I don't know. If they can find a way to do it that makes it the complete package, like Bumblebee is a complete package of a movie, if they can find a way to do that in a War for Cybertron movie, then sign me up. I'm all on board. Can they? I don't know. Maybe. It would also be a ridiculously expensive movie. That's an expensive movie to make. And they right now have to be very realistic about their box office potential, because their box office potential is not what it used to be. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see which way they go with that. It'll be interesting to see. Caledon Sound writes, saw Stan Bush play the touch live this year. That would be fun. I'd be dying to know where you saw that. Where did you see that? Because I have no idea. But that would be a kick to hear. By the way, I couldn't tell you another song he does. By the way, little trivia for you guys watching on the live chat. Answer this in the live chat. What other major motion picture prominently featured the song You've Got the Touch? Go ahead. I'm watching the chat board right now. I know there's about a 30-second delay, so I'll turn back over and look at the 30-second delay there in just a second. But what other major motion picture prominently featured the song You've Got the Touch? So I'll shout out the first person that's able to throw that in there, and we'll see which one of you guys is able to throw in the answer to that one too. So anyway, while we wait, Tom Nguyen writes, thank you, John, for all you do. Make my movie experiences more enjoyable. Where do you think they can take the Transformers story and narrative? Well, I mean, that's really a big question, is where do you go from here? Where do you go? And Sean Laughlin in the chat board, by the way, just to cut off, guys, Sean Laughlin wrote it in there and you got it. Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights. It's the one Mark Wahlberg himself was trying to sing and did the demo tapes from. So good on you, Sean, for getting that in there first. A few other people got it. The other black guy got it. Caledon Sound got it. A couple of you guys got it, but congrats. You were the first one to get it. So congrats to you. Kudos, sir. Respect. Where do they go from here? And this is a great question to end things off with. Where do they go from here? They have a couple of options. And I think the two most likely options are A, take it back to Cybertron. Like, go even further before they abandon Cybertron, and maybe you end the next movie with Bumblebee launching off and heading towards Earth. That's one option. The other option is to, the establishment. Because did you notice that when Bumblebee near the beginning of the movie is running from John Cena and he comes to that mountain, that's the Ark, right? That's where they're going to establish their base. That's the mountain of the Ark, even though there's no Ark ship. That's where their base is going to be. Anyway, so I think your one option is to take a prequel to Bumblebee and go to the war on Cybertron and the drama that plays out there. The other option, and I think this is the most likely, pick it up like 1 year after the event of Bumblebee. Keep it in the 80s. Have it be with those, initial 8 Autobots on Earth. And now the Decepticons show up, a certain contingent of them, and now the battle over Energon starts, but you keep it in the 80s. You could, yes, now flash forward to modern day, but I don't think that's a practical option for them right now. At least certainly not until they really figure out, what's their strategy here. Is this a reboot or is it not? Because I think they did this movie purposefully ambiguous so they can go either direction. So I think they need to get that figured out. And then once they do, move forward. But I honestly think their two best options are either Cybertron or moving forward about 1 year later. But keeping it in the 80s, I think that's their best choice. And what they actually do, we'll have to find out. Tom Nguyen just sends in a follow-up. Follow-up, do you think they will continue Charlie's character arc and John Campea character, the John Cena character? I think, personally, I think Charlie and Bumblebee said their goodbyes. And I think Charlie is now out of the story. You can go back to her as a character. You certainly can if you want to. But to me, yeah, they said their goodbyes. I would move on from that, as a matter of fact. I would move on. As far as the John Cena thing goes, I think it just became clear he can't carry one of these movies. So I think you got to move on. I wouldn't put John Cena in another one. Not until he gets better. I just don't think he can carry a significant big role in a movie. I've only seen him try it in 2. But in both, he didn't do very good. He didn't completely stink the place out in Blockers, but he was clearly the weak link in the chain in that movie. And I don't think he completely stunk the place out in Bumblebee either, but he was clearly the weak link in the chain. So I would be hesitant to have him come back. So my guess right now is no. You don't go back to either of those human characters. You introduce new characters, and we'll see where they go from there. All right, I said that was the last one, but Caledon sent in a question. Guys, please don't send in any more questions. Caledon sends in, saw Stan at the Transformers Nation Con in the UK this year, literally about 2 meters away from me, crowd chanting every word. Dare is another track. Oh yeah, dare to keep all your dreams alive. I totally forgot that was the same guy who did that. Yeah, it totally makes sense to me that it would be at a Transformers convention, though, Caledon. It totally makes sense that it would be at a Transformers convention. All right, guys. That will do it for our little open discussion here on a Saturday evening about Bumblebee. Listen, don't forget, going to be back on again tomorrow. We're going to do an open spoiler discussion about another really good film this weekend, Aquaman. I hope you guys will come back and join me for that as well. All right, guys, that'll do it for this video. My name is John Campea. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I hope to see you tomorrow as well. That'll do it for now. My name is John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.